In order to sell a property, a landlord paid two tenants $10,000 to leave the property in 3 weeks so that they could close escrow, but they didn't leave. And so the realtors had to pay them an additional $5,000. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have some interesting stories for you today, and once again, they're coming from the comments. And as I mentioned before, I'm going to start doing more videos about real stories from real landlords throughout the country and some of the nightmare tenants that they've had to deal with, okay? And one of the topics that I was covering recently was how some landlords in some places have to pay tenants to leave their properties because it's cheaper to pay them than it is to evict them. And yeah, it's unfortunate, but it is it's just a matter of business, okay? You do the math, you realize that, hey, going through the eviction process is expensive. I got to pay lawyers. It's going to take months on end of, not getting paid that rent. Maybe you want to sell the property, you're going to make a substantial amount of money, but you got to get those tenants up out of there, okay? And so whatever it takes, in some cases, it can be tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've heard nightmare stories. One commenter, they wrote that, hey, in Canada, it's not uncommon to see stories about, six-figure payouts. And I'm like, whoa, this is ridiculous. But, it's the cost of doing business. When we're talking about in very expensive places, you can easily get that money back if you're able to sell that unit empty. Okay, so yeah, I don't like that these things are happening, but you know what? It is what it is, and I respect those landlords who are willing to, put that money out there and get rid of these tenants. Now, I have no respect for the tenants at all. They are a bunch of entitled losers, in my opinion. But hey, what can I say other than, it doesn't surprise me one bit that a lot of people, they want something for nothing. They want to have all the benefits of you paying all that money for the property, and they don't want to have to put any of the money up front like you did, okay? They want to have cheap rent forever. They want, to be able to live in there for their entire life, treat the place as though they own it, and they want you to sit there and take the loss. That's ridiculous. It is absolutely ridiculous. So before I get into these comments, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below, and let me know what you think. So, here's a good question for you, right? Of all of the bad tenants that you've had to deal with, which one is the absolute worst, okay? Put a comment down in the comment section. Tell me about the worst tenant that you've had to deal with as a landlord. And, it could be, something minor that just really just rubbed you the wrong way. It could be a tenant who trashed your property. I'm just curious to hear what some of these awful stories are, and maybe I'll share some of these stories on a future video coming up. So anyway, let's get into these comments. They're pretty good, and I think you'll enjoy them. So the first comment I have for you today is coming from my video, Landlord Pays a Tenant $2,500 to leave, but she refuses to go. And, this comment is actually coming from a tenant. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because people say, well, I never talk about, the good tenants out there, right? And so I thought I'd start off with a kind of a good tenant story. And this one is coming from Nancy Wilson 346. And she says, my landlord dropped the eviction against me on January 10th when we did the walkthrough and I turned over the keys. She even said that I will get my security deposit back if I give her my mailing address. And I like that, okay? I like that because one, you left willingly, okay? You realized, hey, I can't pay the rent. I'm going to leave, okay? There's no reason for me to sit here and fight this and drag this out. I am going to get the heck out of there. I'm going to give the landlord their property back, and I'm going to go. The landlord said, well, if that's the case, there's no reason to evict you. You're not going to end up with an eviction on your record, and because you left the place in good shape, we're going to give you your security deposit back. So that is what we want to see happen. We do not want to go to eviction court. We do not want to have to fight and argue over getting our property back. But this is the example of what I like to see. This is actually a good tenant, even though, they might not have been able to pay the rent, or, they were facing eviction. Originally, the problem was resolved, and, no harm, no foul. Okay. So for the tenants watching this, this is what we want. But what we don't want is some of these situations I have in these other comments. And this is coming from the other video I had. Landlord forced to pay tenant $7,500 to leave, but gets the last laugh as the tenant gets arrested. Okay. And this is from a username First Floor Guy 59. I had a tenant not pay for months. He said I would have to take him to court. I was forced to continue to pay for utilities for this person to live after he appeals the lower court. It's not landlords that are making these issues. People are so entitled and don't care someone is footing the bill. He also continued to move people in as he pleased. Bills kept getting bigger and bigger, and the apartment was destroyed. Yeah, now this is like the nightmare scenario I'm talking about all the time, okay? We have a tenant who, facing eviction, not paying rent, and, the utilities, for some reason, I don't know if it's one of those places where the landlord has to pay the utilities, or if the tenant stops paying, it automatically goes back into the landlord's name. I have properties like that, right, where if the utilities are cut off, they come back into my name, but they still have all these bills accumulating, and meanwhile they're appealing and going through all these motions. Maybe they got a free lawyer from one of these tenant rights groups, and there's no thought of, hey, I am bleeding this person dry. This person is literally paying not just for their own life, but they're paying for my life too. They act like this is a victimless crime, and it's not. It is literal theft, okay? And I've mentioned this before. It is my belief that when a tenant is not paying rent and has no intention of paying and staying somewhere for free, it is theft. Just like stealing off of the shelf at the local store, okay? You're taking something that does not belong to you and you're not paying for it. And that something is our property. So, think of it more as theft, and not as, oh, well, this is just a person who, we don't want them to end up homeless. Yeah, whatever, right? Somebody is literally taking money out of your pocket. So what do you consider that to be? I know what it is. And, the most of us landlords, we already know this. This one's coming from my video, another one from the same video. Landlord forced to pay tenant $7,500 to leave, but gets the last laugh. And he says, this is from a user called V1-VR-Rotate-V2-VY underscore VX31. And the user says, in an effort to get 2 tenants out of my property to close escrow in 3 weeks, I gave up $10,000. However, the tenants tried to negotiate for another $5,000. I told the realtors they can pay the other $5,000 if they want to close the deal, which they did. That was $15,000 the 2 tenants received. So in this situation, we're talking about a landlord who was trying to sell their property, okay? And this is what I mentioned at the very beginning, the intro to the video. And basically, in this situation, you have a strong motivation to want to get these tenants up out of there. And the realtors also had a strong motivation, considering that they get paid based upon the commission from the sale. So they said, okay, is it worth it? Yes. And, this is the kind of thing that you have to go through in your head when you're trying to think of these payouts, if you're willing to make the payout at all. Is it worth it? And in the case of selling a property, yeah, it could very well be hundreds of thousands of dollars in profit that is on the line that these tenants are holding up. That is why, $10,000 might not seem like a great sacrifice to many people. And even to the real estate agents, they could be making, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 or more from a single transaction. So they might say, yeah, another $5,000 to make sure that they're up out of there. Yeah, it's worth it. It's worth it. You know, I say cover your bases, make sure that you write out a clear legal contract to make sure that they don't get scammed, and make sure they don't get paid a penny until the moment they are moved up out of that house. Okay? So, I mean, you got to do what you got to do, but at the same time, I just feel like, man, you know, like sometimes these tenants, they get away with straight, you know, just stealing, and it's wrong, but at the same time, you know, it's extortion. It's extortion. That's what it seems like to me. That situation I just read seems more like they extorted not just the owner, but the real estate agents as well. So, Sand Ratier 1994 says, I have a lot of frustration with tenants who don't or can't read the documents they sign. When I sign the first lease, I read it to the tenants, but sometimes they don't listen or don't understand and don't ask questions. And this is very common for me as well, okay? I literally, when we're going through the lease, right, I read the whole thing to them. You know, I explain everything that I can to them. I ask, hey, you do understand what this means, you know, just to make sure that they know. And I have them initial every single page of the lease document, including signing it at the end. I make sure that, you know, not only do I have a copy, but they have a paper copy, and, you know, because I want to make sure that my bases are covered so that they know exactly what is going to happen with this, right? And you know what? I suggest all landlords do this. You know, don't have a little, you know, no lease. You know, I've heard of landlords who, you know, especially very, very small landlords, maybe they're renting out one property or one room in their house even, who don't even have a lease. And that is a kind of situation that will put you in it'll be awful. It'll be absolutely awful, because there's no protecting yourself. There's no protecting yourself from what could possibly happen to you, right? And so, you know, I want to say that, you know, most tenants are good. I'm going to say that, right? But the bad tenants will always leave a bad taste in my mouth, okay? They will make me be just a little bit more bitter and angry, and, you know, I don't trust anybody at this point anymore. So, you know, I suggest strongly that as a landlord, look at it as a business, right? You can trust people, but you have to verify. You have to verify that they are being good to you, and then, you know, don't allow yourself to be taken advantage of for a long period of time. Sometimes, you know, even the best landlord can get taken advantage of, right? But you got to jump on it immediately and make sure that you kick those people to the curb, you know, and you take care of that situation as quickly as possible. But anyway, like I said, if you have any nightmare tenant stories that you would like to share, please put them down in the comment section.